Hello. First thing I want to make clear is that I don't speak Arabic. I haven't been a Muslim all my life, so this is as much a play area and exercise in my own thinking as it is me trying to tell you something. I'm not trying to tell you how to read the Quran or what it's saying. I'm just trying to put some ideas out there and give you an idea of how I travel through this this journey with the Quran. So what I want to talk about is metaphor. We all understand that the Quran, even the literalists understand that some of it is metaphor. What I want to explore here is what we think metaphor is traditionally, and actually how metaphor itself needs to be understood in order to access some of the divine truths, if you like. So from the title, Transient Conceptual Understanding, what I'm trying to get across is that language changes with our understanding. We are in a constant dialogue with ourselves and with the Quran. Okay? So, firstly, the problem we have is with language. When we want to talk about God, we talk about the existence of God. What are we talking about? The minute we talk about God, we have created an image. We've created the man in the sky. Here we immediately have a problem. If we talk about God being great or greater, we immediately compare God to something else. That something else is generally animate. We have created the man in the sky again. So how can we access this God, Allah, whatever it is, this concept, without using language? How can we have an a priori experience, a direct experience of God? We need to be able to talk objectively about something which is ultimately completely subjective. Or is it? Okay. So if God is timeless, if God is outside of our understanding, which we are told all the time, we can't understand everything, we cannot understand God, then how can we have this dialogue? And this is the argument of atheists. This is the argument I made for 47 years of my life. You can't prove that there's anything there, and you tell me that I can't understand it. Well, how can you understand it? And you tell me that you can't understand it, so what is it that we can't understand? Something that's understandable, not understandable. So it's gobbledygook. So what we have to try and find out is what actually these scriptures are trying to get across, not what we eventually do with them, which we'll come to later. Okay, so what is a metaphor? If I say to you, I think our relationship is on a collision course unless we put the brakes on, negotiate the obstacles and go back to the start. You know perfectly well what I'm talking about. Okay? We are talking about a relationship that's a romantic relationship that's breaking down. This would be a typical conversation between two partners. Okay? This is metaphor. But how could you say this? How can you talk about your relationship with somebody without using metaphor? The relationship is broken down. It needs repair. There's a start and there's a possible end. So we are talking about love as an object travelling through time. And so this metaphor is, how we use metaphor is in order to be able to explain things that can't actually be explained literally. Or what? Or is it? Because metaphor isn't necessarily just a way of helping us to understand. Traditionally, we think of metaphor as a way of explaining a literal thing to give you a deeper understanding. Maybe metaphor isn't actually helping us understand a literal concept. The metaphor is the understanding itself. The metaphor is actually a part of language, not an alternative language. The Quran tells us this is not poetry. And we go, oh, but it's all written in metaphor and it rhymes. Huh? Isn't that poetry? The point is that the metaphor is not flowery language to explain something that already exists. The metaphor is language itself, and I want to show you how that works before So the classical assumption is that everyday language is literal. So when we have normal conversations about everyday things, we are talking about literal, objective realities. We are not referring to metaphor. So if I tell you to put your shoes on, I am telling you literally to put an object onto your feet. Okay, I don't need metaphor, and we generally understand metaphor as being something alternative to direct language. So only literal language can be contingently true or false. I can only tell you that, I'm going to do the count on that is a cup on a table. Once you understand that that is a cup and that is a table, then you can't deny it's a contingent truth, it's literal. That is a cup, that is a table, it is on top of it, boom. When we start talking about other things, and we start bringing in metaphor, if I say, Farouk's face, Farouk has a face of thunder now, you would automatically deduce that he's quite angry with what I'm saying. Not that literally stuff's coming out of his eyes. So we think in classical terms as metaphor as being an alternative language. However, contemporary metaphor theory tells us that there is actually a general principle that governs linguistic expression. So when we talk about journeys, if you look at what I said about the relationship, you can apply that to any concept, anything actually, any kind of concept, literal or otherwise, and look at how we use metaphor. Everything we talk about in our lives is a journey. We talk about, oh, I'm glad that's behind me now, because my exams are over. I'm really looking forward to. The language is not embedded in metaphor. Metaphor actually underpins language. Everything we talk about as a linear or a vertical scale, and I'm interested in the linear. So there is actually a general principle that governs how we talk. That metaphor is as logically consistent as literal language. Okay? So according to cognitive metaphor theory, Lakoff Reddy actually developed this theory. Metaphor is not a product of language, rather language is a product of metaphor. So what they are now saying is that metaphor actually is a way of describing an understanding we already have. We don't, when we talk in literal senses, we have constructed a symbolic way of communicating about an object. When we use metaphor in the way that the divine texts use it, it is a universal language that is enabling us to access imagery. So when you think, most of you, when you think, is anyone dyslexic here? If you are dyslexic, you are more likely to think in pictures, if for everyday words, okay? Now when you think of any concept, you will have an image in your mind. If I ask you to think about love, you don't necessarily see the word L-O-V-E and go, yes, I know what that is. You will access a whole bunch of images, feelings, memories in order to construct this idea of love. Okay, so it's getting a bit platonic now. It's getting a bit Plato. So what these metaphor theorists are saying is that we are accessing something, an understanding we already have. We have some kind of innate understanding, and metaphor enables us to access these. Oh, I've missed one.